This video contains multiple spoilers for My Friendly Neighborhood. Do not watch if you are planning on playing this game soon. You have been warned.
As much as I really do enjoy the franchise, you can't ignore the disastrous effects that Five Nights at Freddy's has had on the indie gaming scene. Every other horror game you see skyrocket in popularity has some kind of cutesy-tootsy mascot plastered right onto the cover. They're all trying to market their cast of cuddly and cute characters to every single iPad kid on the planet. And then before you know it, every kiosk at your local mall is filled with nothing but bands and huggy wuggies for as far as the eye can see. It's the modern day equivalent of when every horror game used to look like a VHS recording of a PS1 game. Modern mascot horror runs the trope of childhood innocence gone sour directly into the ground. Usually they're nothing more than jump scare games that take the avenue of what I like to call Souls-like storytelling, which means that the plot sits in the back seat and the game attempts to use environmental cues or subtle hints to clue the player in on what's going on, when in reality it boils down to nothing more than a bad narrative that's explained through 50 different journal pages you find scattered on the ground. I will be 100% honest, even though most of them are schlock, I do get a kick out of the sweet gone spooky character gimmick and the cheap scares that come with it. That's pretty much all I want from these mascot horror games, cheap jump scares and really not much else.
Was that the bite of 87?
These games really start to stink when they dip into all the convoluted lore.
But hey, that's just...
Simplicity is, in my opinion, what made the original Five Nights at Freddy's so good. It was a creepy game about a bunch of freaky Chuck E. Cheese wannabes, and it's really all it was, and it had some cheap scares with it. When it got into all the convoluted lore, it's really when I started to lose interest. When I first saw My Friendly Neighborhood, I anticipated yet another milquetoast horror romp. The Resident Evil inspired gameplay really interested me, and like I said, cheesy horror is a guilty pleasure of mine. My expectations were low for this game, and what I got didn't really meet them. Following in the footsteps of many games before it, My Friendly Neighborhood takes the sweet innocence of Sesame Street and the Muppets and twists it into something dark and disturbing. It focuses on the titular television show, The Friendly Neighborhood. Having been cancelled for numerous years, the show suddenly starts broadcasting again, taking over the news and other regularly scheduled programming. You take the shoes of Gordon, a handyman tasked with disabling the broadcast tower atop the My Friendly Neighborhood studio, resulting in the show being taken off the air for good. He's your typical grumpy, middle-aged man, a short-tempered war vet whose unpleasant personality has put him on thin ice when it comes to his job. He's definitely the kind of person that would benefit from a lesson or two on how to become a friendly neighbor. Proudly wearing its inspirations on its sleeve, it's your typical survival horror game influenced by Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Seemingly endless hordes of off-brand Muppets broken up by various puzzles and brain teasers. From a purely technical standpoint, this is where the game excels. It captures all of the mechanics and systems that make survival horror games great and executes them perfectly. Combat strikes a very satisfying balance, giving you all the means to handle yourself in a fight without making you feel like an unstoppable force. Even though your enemies are nothing more than dummies, literally and figuratively, each fight can pose a serious threat if you go in unprepared. On top of this, no two puppets are the same. One may go down in just a couple shots, while another may take an entire magazine. This keeps every engagement interesting and forces you to seriously pick your battles. Choosing which enemies to fight and which ones to leave is a hallmark of good survival horror. If you're able to mow down all of the enemies without a care in the world, then the game loses all tension, dipping more into action than survival horror. And if the monsters are too strong, or you're just too weak to even take them on in a fight, then the game becomes too tedious. Saving follows the same conventions as the original Resident Evil, with some additional twists to mix things up. Saving can only be done at specific stations around the studio, each requiring a token if you want to save your progress. Tokens are obviously limited, but they can also be used at health stations to fully heal Gordon. This makes the already difficult task of finding tokens even more stressful, as you have to manage how and when you use them. It's another layer of strategy that I absolutely love. Inventory management is the same grid-based system pulled directly from Resident Evil 4. It's a classic used in almost every survival horror game for years. It's effectively limiting and adds another layer of depth to the game as a whole. Every area in the game is also supplemented by a more substantial puppet than the normal rank and file ones you normally find, acting similarly to a Mr. X or Pyramid Head style enemy. They each pose a unique challenge and can't be taken down by conventional means. Pearl marks the first of these puppets you encounter. Roaming one of the abandoned studio sets, her hulking size makes her fairly intimidating. Luckily, she's entirely blind, making her fairly easy to avoid. Stalking the sewage system in the studio basement is Ray. Ray will pop out at various pipes around the level, swatting at any intruders who get too close. His appearances often block your path, forcing you to find an alternative route or leave and re-enter the same room until he decides to shove off. If you're unlucky enough, sometimes you'll even enter a room right in front of a pipe Ray is sticking out of, resulting in a good bit of forced BS damage. No! That is not fair. That is just blanket bullshit. And just as a little bit of a shameless plug, if you want to see more clips just like the one you saw now, be sure to check me out live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Dizrush, where I'm live every Tuesday and Thursday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Goblet stalks the studio's offices and theater. Immediately threatening from her girth alone, she'll charge at you without a moment's notice. All in all, she's extremely easy to avoid. There's only a couple of rooms that she can spawn in, and her lack of dexterity makes her easy to dodge. Scraps, Flooper, and Mahoney are the three dogs that guard the studio's garden and playground. In typical guard dog fashion, they charge at Gordon when he gets close, but are easy to take down with a couple shots. Though they may not seem like much of a threat, they are a consistent one that will drain your ammunition if they aren't taken care of quickly. The game has its fair share of puzzles, ranging from the mundane to the masterful. A majority of them are honestly just find the thing to put in the thing, but a few are actually really creative brain teasers. The best example of this being the kitchen puzzle. The solution is spelled out directly in front of your face, but the elements are so abstract, something as simple as chopping a vegetable becomes a very difficult task. Everything works together to make an extremely satisfying gameplay loop, and the overall length and pacing of the game works well enough to keep the whole experience from feeling stale. All in all, My Friendly Neighborhood would be a stellar survival horror game, but it's lacking one major detail: the horror. Animate puppets hell-bent on killing you is, I'm sure, one person's nightmare, but when you're a big kid like myself, you need a little bit more to send a shiver down your spine. The game does a successful job at building tension, but it doesn't really execute at turning that tension into horror. And I'm no game developer, but when you're making a horror game, you kinda need horror. Honestly, the game doesn't even get truly scary until its final moments, once Gordon is thrown headfirst into the sinister, unfriendly neighborhood. This is the home of the puppets that have been twisted to a point where they are nothing more than husks of their former friendly selves. They have darker recolors, missing eyes, and have somehow sprouted extremely disturbing rows of human teeth. Here, the horror is absolutely palpable, and in the first few seconds, I could feel the terror creeping up on me. And it really sucks because this whole segment is barely 10 minutes long, with a majority of that being an extremely underwhelming boss fight. This game has all the trimmings of a true blue survival horror game. It's just missing the meat and potatoes, the chills on your skin, not wanting to know what's around that corner, the actual factual horror. But the thing is, this game wasn't even trying for horror in the first place. I said at the start of the video that this game didn't meet my expectations. That was a bit of a half-truth. My expectations were not met, but utterly exceeded and shattered into pieces. From the beginning, I was expecting My Friendly Neighborhood to be just another mascot horror game, same as all the ones that came before it, and all the ones that will come after it. And at first blush, this is kind of true, but everything from the presentation to the themes to the actual gameplay itself is a masterful deconstruction of the mascot horror genre. If Five Nights at Freddy's is the video game equivalent to Friday the 13th, then My Friendly Neighborhood would be Scream, a subversion of the entire genre that speaks volumes about the medium as a whole. Sesame Street and the greater Muppets franchise is a brand recognized worldwide. Millions of people, myself included, have wholesome memories of Elmo, Big Bird, and Kermit the Frog, which makes it the absolute perfect candidate for mascot horror. Just take a look at Norman, one of the main puppets you encounter time and time again, who is plastered on the game's key art. That's what all these other mascot games have been doing for years. They take a conventionally cute character and freak them up in the most generic way possible. It's an easy way to generate some fear, but it's also the best way to market to children. That's the real ticket. My Friendly Neighborhood doesn't lean into this nearly as much as other games. Some titles twist the designs by accentuating more disturbing elements to add a layer of fear. Soulless eyes, sharp teeth, bloody deformities, all simple but effective ways to generate fear in the player. In general, most of the puppets you'll encounter are just that, puppets. They look cute, they talk cute, and even when they act scary, it's still mostly cute. The more substantial puppets like Pearl and Ray do have some traits that make them a little more disturbing than the rest of the cast. No blood or claws or anything like that, just tweaks to proportions or facial structure that make them a tad bit more disturbing than the rest. Now you might think this whole thing is undone by the puppets in the Unfriendly Neighborhood. I mean, they check all the boxes of generic mascot horror design. Weird teeth? Check. Disturbingly missing eyes? Check. Even the boss of this area is a deformed mashup of a bunch of other puppets. It's the fact that it's all just so heavy-handed with the cliches that gives it a lot more validity to it all being subversion. Everything before this point had been mildly scary at best, even going as far to be comical in a number of places. The Unfriendly Neighborhood goes from 0 to 60 in a matter of moments. It's all designed to poke fun at the other mascot horror games that just try a little bit too hard. Everything here is as shallow as a puddle. That's why you don't spend much time here and why the boss fight is so disappointing. Seriously, you can spend the entire fight running in circles without even firing a shot. It's also painfully superficial, and that's the point. Before I realized what this game was trying to achieve, I was honestly a little disappointed that there wasn't some kind of complicated lore. I know I said that complicated backstories kind of turned me off when it comes to games like this, but I do get a kick of seeing why this cute and cuddly psychopath is on a massive killing spree. There's no explanation as to why everything is so upside down in the Friendly Neighborhood. And more importantly, why the heck there are actual living puppets walking around inside the studio. I expected there to be some grand twisting yarn of demons or child spirits, and I was honestly a little bummed when I found none of that. The origins of the puppets are left unanswered. At first it felt like a glaring hole in the game's plot. Even Gordon seems pretty okay with the fact that there are walking talking puppets all over the place. But this is again another spin on an established mascot horror trope. Endless, headache-inducing lore that falls apart when you think about it for more than 2 seconds. There's all this crazy stuff going on and you're just kind of supposed to go along and accept it. And that's kind of the point. This game subverts the trope of the crazy, complicated, stupid backstories that every other mascot horror game has by not even entertaining it in the slightest. It does, however, shine a little bit of light on a few things. Having childlike sensibilities, the puppets are oblivious to a lot of things, one of them being their own strength. Despite literally being cloth dolls, the puppets are pretty tough, being able to easily wrestle down grown adults to the ground. The studio staff developed the weapons you use throughout the game as a means to keep the puppets under submission, quickly going from a means of control to a means of abuse. After the show was canceled, the company behind the show didn't want to put up with what basically equated to children, so they simply left the puppets behind, letting them roam free within the studio's walls. All the while, their need and desire for companionship and guidance grew into mental instability. They all had so little interaction with the outside world that they just went stir-crazy. Psychotically stir-crazy, to be exact. They don't attack Gordon out of malice or spite. He's the first actual human they've seen in God knows how long. They just don't know how to react. Even when they attack you, it's obvious they just want a hug. Gordon himself is even a spin on the typical protagonists that you find in these kind of horror games. More often than not, these characters tend to be faceless, wordless voids that have very little, if any, personality, being something that the player can easily slot themselves into. Gordon is the opposite of this. He's gruff, impatient, and often makes his aggravation known through various quips and during conversations. Even though he's a tad bit generic, being your typical stoic, salty former soldier, he works well as a yin to the Friendly Neighborhood's yang. This foil dynamically changes as the game progresses, primarily in regards to the more unique puppets that you encounter. Each of them offers an optional side objective that, when completed, provides a nice opportunity for some wholesome emotional growth. Pearl, who I mentioned earlier as being blind, wasn't made that way. Returning her missing eyes and glasses allows Pearl to see again, something she hasn't been able to do for a very long time. It's a remark on how often we lose track of ourselves. We get lost in our lives, our struggles, and the bleakness of the world itself. Before we know it, the time that seemed to drag on has long since passed, and when we finally look at what we've become, the results are less than pleasant. The horrors of war and the tedium of life have hardened Gordon's heart, turning himself into someone that even he doesn't even recognize. Ray is obviously one of the more disturbed puppets that lives in the friendly neighborhood. Even before the show's cancellation, it's implied that his temper and violent disposition got him relegated to the studio's sewage system. Living isolated in a filthy sewer has only made Ray more unstable, resulting in percussive maintenance being the solution for most of Ray's problems. As Gordon repairs the main sewage pump, Ray is stunned at Gordon's mechanical prowess, prompting him to explain to Ray that there are other, less violent ways to solve problems. A fairly ironic lesson that even Gordon himself hasn't fully learned. This was the first friendship moment I encountered in the game, and I'm honestly thankful for that. Obviously, its message is one that can be applied to the real world, but it's very good in context with the rest of the game. Not every solution can be solved with violence, and if you want to make a lot of headway, you need to think outside the box. Goblet superficially seems to be one of the simpler puppets you encounter, though after witnessing a film detailing the horrors of war, Goblet falls into a depression. Seeing one of the puppets convey an emotion that isn't manic psychosis sparks curiosity in Gordon, who then goes down to comfort her. He tells the story of how a scene in a movie depicting a cowboy riding off into the sunset elicited a powerful emotion inside of him. It was, how Gordon puts it, as if he had heard an old friend call out his name. Like the other puppets, Goblet is a child mentally and emotionally. This makes it hard for her to process complicated emotions, resorting to violent outbursts instead of proper coping mechanisms, a trait she shares heavily with Gordon.
Seems like exactly the sort of place you...
When a problem in his life arises, he tends to let his anger boil over, and when he sees this same thing in Goblet, albeit with sadness, he tries to teach her how to better handle her emotions, something that he fully hasn't learned himself. The encounter with the dogs is fairly basic, but is pretty adaptable to the flow of the overall story. It's more of a compliment to the game's earlier friendship moments. There's no emotional drawl that pulls you in, other than the guilt of seeing 3 dogs that haven't been fed in God knows how long. This occurs fairly late into the game, and by this point you've likely helped out all the other puppets with their problems. On its own, it shows that Gordon isn't a heartless monster and is willing to still help out some poor pups, even if they are trying to rip his face off. In context with the earlier moments, it shows that Gordon has grown to be a more caring person, going out of his way to help those in need, even if it doesn't feel like he would benefit from it personally. Arnold is the last puppet you encounter and is the only friendship moment that the game forces you into. After completing the puzzle to escape Arnold's playhouse, he forces Gordon to join him on the piano. After playing a short tune, Arnold exclaims with joy and allows Gordon to move on to the broadcast antenna. It's the weakest of all the friendship encounters because there's no real emotional growth between either of the characters, and to be honest, this whole section kind of feels tacked on. It's right before the encounter with the unfriendly neighborhood, and this whole section has a ton of backtracking, but luckily it does feature some of the best puzzles in the game, so it has that going for it. All of these lessons and themes truly culminate with Ricky. He's the first puppet you encounter and the one you meet time and time again throughout the game. Serving as an antagonist of sorts, Ricky never directly harms Gordon, only attempting to convince Gordon to leave the antenna alone through persuasion or by mocking his aggressive personality. Ricky is the one that reactivated the broadcast tower to get the show back on the air. He had seen how unfriendly and sad the world around him had become and thought that bringing the show back would help improve the world just a little bit. As the game progresses, Ricky starts off as being mildly antagonistic, but eventually he starts to show genuine concern for Gordon's well-being, even being fearful that he might be harmed once he falls into the unfriendly neighborhood. Ricky propositions Gordon with a final choice at the end of the game. He can either leave the neighborhood behind and return to his menial life, or stay with the puppets and build a happier, friendlier future for the entire world. Choosing to leave the studio sees Gordon returning to his job as a handyman. Now promoted to manager for doing such a good job at shutting off the antenna, his life objectively improves, but he still feels empty inside. All of the lessons he taught to the puppets, he never fully learned himself, eventually forgetting about the entire ordeal, leaving himself as the same hollow, broken man he was before visiting the friendly neighborhood. Deciding to stay with the puppets sees Gordon restarting the show on public access television. If he didn't follow through with every friendship encounter, Gordon sticks around long enough for the puppets to just get back on their feet before going back to his handyman job, and then he just kind of spends the rest of his life wistfully wondering how the puppets are doing without him. However, helping everyone you can results in Gordon getting fired from his handyman job and residing with the puppets permanently, bringing the show back into the stardom it once had. This fulfills Gordon and gives him a new outlook not only on himself, but on the rest of the world as well. My Friendly Neighborhood is an exceptional piece of subversive storytelling. It primes your expectations and absolutely knocks them out of the park. Its simple presentation touches on a lot of really uncomfortable subjects with a level of success I have not seen in many other games. And it may seem like the world around you is nothing but darkness, and it's something uncomfortable that you don't want to interact with, so you wall yourself away from it and isolate yourself. But you have to remember to look for the light that really is in everything, and you cannot forget about the light that is within yourself before you forget who you even are. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and a comment telling me what you thought about the game and this video as well. Please do subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another video, and I will see you all on the next one. Take care and have a good day.